What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. As much as I love Jeff Lemire's Old Man Logan and All New, All Different Marvel, the one thing that we've never done is cover the original Old Man Logan story. We didn't even cover the continuation of that story in Secret Wars. The only thing we did was touch on like the future of the Old Man Logan universe in Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, and that was it. That was as far as we got. It was like All New, All Different Marvel, Old Man Logan. But that was because I was so excited, and Andrea Sorrentino's art is amazing in All New, All Different Old Man Logan. But because of the fact that the Logan movie is coming out, we are going to cover this. So, Old Man Logan is probably the best Wolverine story ever told, and there'll be no arguing that point. I mean, it's amazing. Like it's so good because it's like it gives his character drive, ambition. It gives him a sad story. It's like everything every Wolverine story ever has been lacking. And so the cool thing about this is that we initially pick up in Sacramento, California. Now at this point in Wolverine's life and Logan's life, he's basically just a farmer, of course, alongside his wife. But one thing to keep in mind is a lot of the backstory before this is being fleshed out in Jeff Lemire's Old Man Logan, and because we've done videos on that, I welcome you guys to go ahead and check those videos. You'll find them down in the description, but that will cover a lot of the things. But then of course we're going to see like the immediate start of all this, the catalyst of all this, the night the X-Men died. We're going to see that in this video, but the fact remains here that this is really just Mark Millar kind of giving us a rundown on what's going on, in the sense that Logan's family are just kind of farmers in a land owned by the Incredible Hulk and his family, but the issue is that rent's due and they're kind of running behind. And the problem with this is that the Hulk family is pretty ruthless, in the sense that they're cruel, they're terrible people, but a lot of it is also just kind of this idea of being spoiled, right? I mean, it's this idea that the family of the Incredible Hulk just run this whole side of the United States, this whole western side of the United States, from, I believe, Washington State all the way down to the border of Mexico. They just run this whole section of the country, and the kids just kind of do whatever it is that they want to do. Of course, the cool thing about this, though, is we're seeing like the old Fantastic Four vehicle. So obviously, it's for us right now to kind of figure out the Fantastic Four have basically been obliterated, but the other half of this is where the Hulk family comes from, which is really messed up. So here was the deal. When the night the X-Men die, when all that stuff took place, that huge event, the event as they refer to it, basically what had happened is when it all come crashing down, the Incredible Hulk had seized control of the west coast of the United States and had actually started producing children with She-Hulk, with his cousin, Jennifer Walters, which is messed up. But the result is that it's basically just a bunch of incestuous kids. Now, the other half of this is that, when Logan says, look, I don't have the money, I'll have it as soon as I can, he's just kind of forced to take a beating here. Now, this is Mark Millar showing us this is what he's about. Like, he's basically not violent anymore. This is not the wildly violent Logan that we know. Instead, it's the Logan that's just like, I don't pop my claws anymore. And so he literally gets the absolute hell beat out of him by the Hulk family, and then just kind of takes his lumps. His son shows up with a shotgun and is like, back off. But of course, Wolverine's healing factor kicks in. Now, something you guys will notice here is the healing factor is not instantaneous, and different writers have taken different approaches with this. But there's a whole aspect of this. Wolverine's healing factor is a result of his mutant biology. It's just cellular regeneration. There have been times where his healing factor burned out. For example, he became feral Wolverine. That was the whole basis after his adamantium was ripped out by Magneto. Of course, you'll also find that down in the description. But after his adamantium was ripped out of his body by Magneto, Wolverine's healing factor basically burned out when he kind of healed his pores. Then he just kind of ran off into the woods for a while. But what Mark Millar seems to be saying here is that his healing factor is relative to his age. When he was young, his healing factor was super fast, but the more injuries he sustained, the older he got, the more his healing factor was being used. It's like a battery. Eventually the juice just kind of starts to wear out. And so his healing factor gets slower and slower. Now, in truth, this was just Mark Millar kind of providing a little bit of interest to the story, in the sense that if Wolverine just immediately healed from everything, then it would have taken away the possibility that he could die. And that's even the whole aspect in Old Man Logan right now and All New, All Different Marvel, that his healing factor is not what it used to be. Of course, he says that all the time. My healing factor is not what it used to be. It allows him to sustain injuries that he has to recover from over the course of a day or two, as opposed to recovering from it instantaneously. But after this beating that he takes from the Hulk family, he's met with the arrival of Hawkeye. And this is cool because Hawkeye's blind at this point. He does not have his eyesight, but his skills are just as good as they ever were. The funny thing about this is that Hawkeye runs up on him and starts calling him Wolverine, but Logan says, my name's not Wolverine, my name is Logan. Basically meaning he's left that whole aspect of his life behind. He's no longer the Wolverine that we knew. The other half of this is that, Hawkeye basically says, look, I'm on a mission to New York. We're literally going to travel the entirety of the United States. I'm on a mission in New York. It's a secret mission. I can't really tell you what it's for, but I need you as some measure of protection. And this is true because when it comes down to it, as one of the last surviving superheroes in the Marvel Universe in this alternate reality, Logan is still wildly capable. The issue here is he doesn't pop his claws anymore. He doesn't use his adamantium claws anymore. And so it's kind of a crazy situation to see because it gives us some pretty wild scenarios. One of the first things that we do is we basically pick up with the revelation that they're using the old Superman vehicle. Now, this was a really cool concept. I'm not Superman, the Spider-Man vehicle. This is an old concept in Marvel Comics, and I want to say that it was designed by Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four and given to Peter Parker as a gift. But basically, it's a vehicle that kind of mimics Peter Parker's wall crawling in the sense that it can climb up virtually any terrain. Now, the way that it's lasted this long is simply just a byproduct of the fact that it's, been rebuilt and so on and so forth time and time again. But the other half of this is that once they make their way into San Francisco proper, they run into the Ghost Riders. Now, we're going to encounter this a couple times where Mark Millar just kind of has new characters taking up the mantle of the old characters, not really being superheroes so much as the Ghost Riders are just vigilantes, but we don't really know if they're like spirits of vengeance. We don't even know how they have Johnny Blaze's flaming motorcycle. They're just kind of there and they just have those. And so it creates an interesting situation to see these individuals kind of running around being vigilantes and whatnot. But of course, Logan basically says, I'm not going to attack you guys. Like, I'm not going to fight you. I don't do that anymore. The crazy thing about this is that while he's basically getting his head beat in to the point that he might actually almost die, Hawkeye, of course, comes in with his arrows. Now, of course, again, this is Mark Millar basically saying, yeah, Hawkeye's blind, but as long as he can hear, he can hit his target. So his aim is just as good as it ever was. It's just he can't really see that accurately anymore. Now, from here, we pick up in Hammer Falls, Nevada, and this is awesome. The reason why it's called Hammer Falls is because on the night the superheroes died, this is where Thor's hammer fell, and no one's been able to pick it up ever since. Not only that, we basically join Ultron 8. Now, this is actually kind of funny because when we think about Ultron, it's like, yeah, man, this wildly dangerous robot that was made by Hank Pym. Every time it shows up, the Avengers are just like, shit, we gotta fight Ultron, and it's just like, oh my God, and it's like this crazy situation. Ultron took over the future once, in the Age of Ultron story. It creates some really, really interesting situations here, but this version of Ultron 8, is actually a chill dude. He's just like, hey, what's going on, guys? It's good to see you. And it's like, wow, what a weird situation. But at this point, we actually pick up with a woman named Tanya Parker. Now, keep in mind, this is like 50 years, removed from really the Marvel Universe before the events of All New, All Different Marvel. And so because of that, Tanya Parker is basically a child of Peter Parker. We don't really know where along the line she was born. It's just she seems to be unique to this reality. I don't know of a Tanya Parker in the main Marvel Universe. So it seems like somewhere along the line in this reality, Peter Parker had a daughter named Tanya. But the other half of this is that even Tanya and Hawkeye had a daughter named Ashley Barton. And that's kind of cool because Ashley Barton is actually basically Spider-Woman, Spider-Girl more or less in this universe, and she's being held by the new Kingpin. And that's one of the crazy things is Tanya says that Ashley Barton and her friends did not like the direction that the new Kingpin was taking, in his whole rule. And so what they did, or what she did anyway, is she formed her own little team, and they basically decided to go to where the new Kingpin was, cast him out, and basically implement their own rule, or at the very least just kind of get rid of him. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, Mark Millar's kind of bouncing back and forth with what Tanya's saying. She's not saying that Ashley Barton wanted to be a good guy. She's saying Ashley Barton wanted to take over the reign of the new Kingpin. Now, from here, we switch over to Utah proper, and it's basically, this new version of the Punisher, this new version of Daredevil. Again, normal people who have taken over these roles of superheroes who have long since been dead. They're basically being held captive by the new Kingpin. Now, what Mark Millar also tells us is that after the night the superheroes died, that Magneto had taken over this area of the United States. And we know that right now from Jeff Lemire's run of Old Man Logan, right? I mean, there's that awesome image that Sorrentino has where Magneto's like basically hovering into New York, and he's basically bringing an entire SHIELD helicarrier down on New York itself. It's one of the most badass scenes from the entire run. I highly suggest you guys check out my videos or go read the story or something like that. It's beautifully drawn and it is incredibly well written. It's probably one of the best Wolverine stories that's ongoing that we've ever seen. But the fact remains here that the new Kingpin says, look, there came a point where Magneto just got weak. He got old and he got weak. And when he did, I beat him and I cast him out. Now, we're not really given any information about this new Kingpin, right? It's just the new Kingpin. But what we also know is that in Marvel Comics, where you have the Savage Land, right, which is like where you have dinosaurs, stuff like that, down in the Antarctic, somewhere along the line, they were brought back to the rest of the populated world around the time that the night the superheroes died. And then following the death of the superheroes, a collapse of society, so on and so forth, these dinosaurs just kind of ran amok across the country. And so this new Kingpin had basically turned this massive stadium into a gladiatorial arena where people who were caught trying to kill him, you know, or who were caught, you know, committing crimes or what have you, are basically forced into being killed by dinosaurs or forced into gladiatorial combat. But with Logan and Hawkeye being here, their goal is strictly to rescue Ashley Barton. They're not here to take out Kingpin. They're not here to do any of that. They're basically here to just rescue Ashley Barton. Now, they're able to pull this off and basically freeing her, right? You know, I mean, you have new Kingpin who walks in. He's like, what in the hell is going on here? You know, and then Ashley Barton knocks off his head with a shotgun barrel. And this is the crazy thing, is because Hawkeye says, hey, what are you doing? Like, we're here to rescue you. She says, no, I'm here to take over the rule of the Kingpin. I'm here to take his place as being like a ruler of this section of the country. And so it's like Hawkeye's daughter has basically just become a bad guy now. And that's how this society functions. That's what Mark Miller's telling us. This is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Those with the strength to survive will survive. Those who don't have the strength to survive will not survive. This is especially so when Wolverine, or I guess when Logan basically like runs her over, you know, to a degree, and rescues Hawkeye. Now, something else that I want to point out here is that with the character of Ashley Barton, because of the fact that her mother is Tanya Parker, she's basically inherited spider abilities. We learned this when we were going through Spider-Verse, and we had Dr. Octopus in the body of Peter Parker traveling to the Old Man Logan universe and grabbing Ashley Barton as one of the members of the Spider family to go against the Inheritors. We'll cover that once we get closer to the release of Spider-Man Homecoming, as we're going, I guess as we're remastering Spider-Verse. But the fact remains that Ashley Barton is more or less a lost cause here. I mean, you know, really it's Logan as Hawkeye saying, hey, look, there's nothing we can do. Like, she's basically lost. And so where Ashley Barton sends a whole bunch of her forces after them, you know, while they're trying to make their escape, in the middle of this, you know, this race, the ground opens up in the middle of an earthquake and everybody falls inside. Now, this is when we learn the dark, you know, the dark aspect of what's been going on underground, in the sense that we basically have the Maloids. Now, in Marvel Comics, the Maloids are like these weird mutated mole type things, whatever it is, but they were always controlled by a guy named Mole Man. And Mole Man, of course, being a longtime Fantastic Four villain, was always there for the purpose of keeping the Maloids in check, allowing them to carry out his own schemes, things like that. Somewhere along the line, Mole Man was probably killed, or basically the Maloids turned on him, whatever the case may have been. But the result is that every once in a while, the Maloids will go up into the surface, or they'll get as close to the surface as they can. They'll literally sink a town and they'll eat every single person that they find. And that's basically what happened here. In this earthquake, the ground opened up, all these people fell inside, these 50 vehicles worth of individuals, and the result was that the Maloids ate every single one of them except for Hawkeye and Logan. Now, of course, they're able to make their escape. I mean, you know, they're able to get out of there just like we would expect. But something crazy here is that while they're making their drive, there's this giant, you know, body sitting on the ground, like laying on the ground, that's covered in the Baxter building. And Logan's like, what the hell is that? And Hawkeye's like, that's the body of Loki. That Loki was killed in this entire conflict. And that's Mark Miller showing us like how huge this situation is, like how massive this battle is, that it was just everyone everywhere. Like, it was just so many villains, so many superheroes, it was just like this massive battle, this battle to end all battles between all these different superheroes and supervillains. And so what happens is Hawkeye and Logan basically stop in Des Moines, Iowa, you know, to grab a drink, kind of relax and chill and so on and so forth. But in the middle of all this, you know, a guy kind of makes a snide comment. In response, you know, Logan just kind of freaks out. Now, of course, he ends up walking out of the bar, you know, because again, he's a non-violent guy here. But Hawkeye's like, dude, man, you got to tell me what happened. Like, what in the hell happened to you? Like, what happened that made you this way? And this is when we learn the story. This is when we see this conflict. What we do is we pick up with the X-Mansion 50 years prior to this, before all this happened. And we basically join Jubilee when she gets a distress call from everyone. The Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Fantastic Four, Black Panther in Wakanda, the Inhumans, the whole 9 yards, Excalibur in Britain, Alpha Flight in Canada. Every superhero team everywhere is sending out an SOS. Well, before the X-Men can respond, there's this massive explosion, and it's like 40 supervillains from across the Marvel universe that have invaded the X-Mansion. I mean, you have Strife, the clone of Cable, an Omega-level mutant who's nigh unstoppable, you know, Ulysses Claw, Dr. Octopus. I mean, it's the whole 9 yards, and more just keep showing up. Silver Samurai, Bullseye, Absorbing Man, the whole 9 yards. The crazy thing about this is Wolverine is taking them all out, right? I mean, he's crushing every single one of these guys. And it's so cool to see, because this is like Wolverine in his perfect form, right? It's like Wolverine just rage, just crushing everyone, tearing all these guys limb from limb. Well, while, you know, he's getting everybody, while he's telling like all these kids, get out of here, and he's calling on the X-Men, once everything is done and he kills Bullseye, enter Mysterio. Now, Mysterio is a Spider-Man villain, and Mysterio is the master of casting illusions. And this is when we find out Wolverine was not fighting villains. Wolverine was killing the X-Men. He killed them all. Every one of them. The New Mutants, Storm, Nightcrawler, Cyclops, Gambit, Jubilee, every last one. And Mysterio, says, look, if it was all these villains, the fight would have been a lot more insane than it currently looked right here. But he was like, but against friends, people who would have hesitated, you would have killed them before they even landed a single blow. And so he simply says, on behalf of the entire criminal community, thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your actions. Now, following this, Wolverine had basically, he just succumbed to insanity. I mean, well, not really insanity, but he just kind of seemed to lose his mind. He actually tried to kill himself, of course, by letting a train run over his head. But this was basically the event. Now, the one thing that we haven't seen, what we have not seen in Marvel Comics, is what happened to everybody else. Well, at least to a degree. We have not seen, the huge battle between, the Avengers. We didn't see, a huge battle between the Fantastic Four. We didn't really see what happened to those groups. We'll find out what happened to Captain America. We'll find out what happened to Hank Pym. Spider-Man, we kind of get an idea, but that's about it. But from here, following the revelation of this story, we actually pick up at a bridge called Dwight's Toll. And this is really, really cool because when Hawkeye and Logan show up to this bridge, Dwight's like, dude, it's 80 cents if you guys want to get past. Now, initially, Logan's like, that's stupid. We're not going to give this kid, this kid 80 cents. And Hawkeye's like, yes, we are. We're going to give Dwight 80 cents and we're going to go about our business. And the reason why is because Dwight has the helmet of Scott Lang of Ant-Man. All right. The helmet that Dwight uses controls ants. Basically, what we find out is that anybody who doesn't pay the toll gets eaten by the ants. And so it was money well spent, essentially. But the funny thing about this is that while they're making their way, they're suddenly attacked by a T-Rex covered in the Venom symbiote. And this is one of the coolest things ever. It's one of the coolest things ever. And it's something that I never would have thought of before. I never would have thought of the Venom symbiote seizing control of a dinosaur and attacking people. Because remember, the Venom symbiote is sentient. It thinks. It has a mind of its own in a lot of ways. And so because of that, the entire situation is actually being monitored by Emma Frost of the X-Men. And so what she does is she tells her guys, send Black Bolt out to where Wolverine and out to where Logan and Hawkeye are at. Because remember, Black Bolt's quasi-sonic scream is basically just a sound. He emits a scream that's capable of just crushing almost everything in its path. And so because of this, he goes out there, he basically just says, stop, the scream's enough to affect the Venom symbiote. Because remember, symbiotes are affected by sound. That's one of their major weaknesses. And they're basically whisked back to what's called the Forbidden Quarter. Now, this is kind of the cool thing because this is super short. It's not at all lengthy by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a lot of cloak and dagger going on here, in the sense that Hawkeye's talking to Emma Frost, and this whole thing of what went on behind the scenes that we haven't seen yet about how Emma Frost married her husband. She was able to create a refuge where, mutants can live free of persecution. There's only 20 mutants left in the entirety of the Marvel universe in this reality, just different things like that. It's really Mark Millar showing us how massive this battle was. Not only that, Emma Frost says that where mutants were believed to be the future of human evolution, that eventually a time would come when there would be more mutants than humans, and eventually there'd be only mutants and no humans at all. She says, no, that's not the direction evolution was going in. It was just a handful of us that came up, and there's been no more mutants born since, for the last 20 years or however long, we were just a small moment in time. There'll never be any mutants again. But when Hawkeye and Logan's vehicle is repaired and they're basically allowed to go on their way, we find out this entire situation, as it's been, with Emma Frost and everything, has all been monitored by Doctor Doom. And that's the last time we see him. And it's the most disappointing thing ever because I was like, no, I want to know more about what Doctor Doom was doing during all this. But from here, we continue on their trip and they actually come across Pym Falls. And again, it's these small little things that Mark Millar gives us. It kind of shows us the gravity of the situation, how dark things got. The reason why it's called Pym Falls is because during this massive battle of the superheroes and the supervillains that, Hank Pym as Giant Man had been killed somewhere along the line. Now, of course, we find out in Old Man Logan by Jeff Lemire that the Maloids did this, that under the direction of Mole Man, I think it was, the Maloids rose up underground and they literally ate Hank Pym alive. And so it was it was really messed up. Well, once they get into New York, which is basically New Babylon, we find out this entire territory is being ruled by the Red Skull. Not only that, once we get to what this meeting was supposed to be, that is basically Hawkeye meeting with the resistance movement operating to try to topple Red Skull as leadership. And that's kind of cool because the rebel movement, the resistance movement is just kind of splintered all over the country. But if they take out Red Skull's leadership, if they take him out in New York and New Babylon, then it basically means that they now have a base of operations to work out of with regards to, creating their movement, focusing more, and then just kind of stretching outwards, eventually taking back the whole United States. The problem with this is that this whole rebel movement is a ruse, that it was a scheme developed by the Red Skull to lure out Hawkeye and whatever superheroes may still exist, that this case that Hawkeye had been carrying around contained vials of the super soldier serum with the intention of creating more Captain Americas. But these SHIELD agents, as they call themselves, these agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that basically work on behalf of the Red Skull, shoot Wolverine all to pieces, and then kill Hawkeye. And so what happens is we basically transition to 50 years earlier during, again, this whole battle of the superheroes, and we join Red Skull and Captain America. And this is when we find out that, again, the Capitol was one of the first things to fall. That Captain America was basically defeated by the Red Skull, and the Red Skull killed him by crushing his skull, which is so messed up. What we also learn here from the Red Skull is that when it came to the supervillains in Marvel Comics, that the supervillains basically kind of formed, grudges against superheroes, and they were always bound by those grudges. And so you would have people like Mysterio who would go against Spider-Man because he just hated losing to Spider-Man, but they would never work together. They would never really focus. And so what Red Skull did is he basically gathered up, he organized all the supervillains and said, hey, some of you are better suited fighting against other superheroes that you would never fight. Mysterio, you cast illusions. People believe whatever you want them to believe. If you make someone see something, then everything they see, they smell, their whole five senses are all manipulated. He's like, you need to go take out Wolverine is what you need to do, because his enhanced senses are his biggest weakness. If you know how to manipulate them, that's the kind of thing Red Skull was doing. And so he basically rallied all the villains together and launched a simultaneous attack against all the superheroes of the world at the exact same time, so nobody could respond to help anybody else. Everybody was just staving off their own threat. It was a divide and conquer mentality. And the result was that it allowed the Red Skull to not only be victorious, but to take the capital of the United States along with the entire eastern seaboard for his own. Not only that, we find out that he's actually keeping these relics of superheroes, the cloak of Doctor Strange, the surfboard of Silver Surfer, the armor of Tony Stark, a hand of the Thing Ben Grimm. These are all the superheroes that died in this major conflict. Not only that, the Red Skull's basically lost his mind in the sense that he's wearing Captain America's uniform, which is really kind of insane, as well as the cloak of the Punisher. But what ends up happening here is once the bodies are brought to him, really for the purpose of keeping them as trophies and so on, of course, Logan's healing factor kicks in. It's slower than it used to be, but it kicks in. He emerges, and he and Red Skull just end up, getting into this massive fight. Now, this is kind of the funny thing, is because Red Skull is kind of taunting him a little bit. Red Skull's having fun here, but it doesn't matter because Red Skull's like, look, you're not going to kill me. You're Logan now. You're not Wolverine. You're Logan. You don't pop your claws. You don't do any of that. And so the result, Logan basically grabs the shield of Captain America and decapitates Red Skull, which is one of the coolest things to see. Not only that, he's like, I'm in a building surrounded by Red Skull's guards. I need a way to get out of here. Well, what does he do? He dons the armor of Tony Stark, of Iron Man, and literally takes them all out and flies back to Sacramento with all the money that was supposed to be used during this deal, because in his mind, he can use this money to pay whatever he owes for the property that he's renting from the Hulk family, not to mention, pay well in advance, so they don't really have to worry about things anymore. The problem with this is that when he gets back to his home, he's basically told the Hulk family got bored. The Sons of the Incredible Hulk got bored. And because they got bored, they massacred your family. Now, let me tell you something, Rob. We as people we make mistakes sometimes, right? Like we make mistakes. We do things that we wish we hadn't done. For example, we go to a restaurant where you pay before you eat, only for us to realize that we cannot tip the waitress because we don't have cash. So you've got to sneak out with your sister so the waitress doesn't see you, realizing that you're not going to be able to leave a tip. You feel bad, but you do what you got to do. We make mistakes sometimes. Seeing his family killed like this for the first time in the comic, and this is amazing, like full page spread, it's just like snicked. Wolverine pops his claws, when he's like, my name's not Logan, my name's Wolverine. Now let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, Rob Core. This Hulk family was not prepared. Like, Logan goes after the first two guys that crushed his family, and he chops them into pieces. Like, he cuts them into pieces. Not only that, he goes to the diner, to Stark's bar, where some of these guys are hanging out, and he kills every last one of them. He crushes them all, decapitates them, runs his claws through his head. He goes to Hugh Hefner's mansion, where there's basically a brothel being run after they've worn all these girls out. Like, he goes in there and he crushes every last one of these, just kills every last one of these guys. It's this amazing sequence. Finally, he goes to the lair of the Incredible Hulk, to the Banner family, all right? And he rolls in, drops a bomb, blows the whole place up, and then just starts going through and killing every single member of Hulk's family, decapitating, cutting their limbs off. It's just rage. This is Logan in his most wrathful, vengeful form. But finally, because of all the racket that he's making, he's met with Bruce Banner. Now, the ironic thing about this is that this is basically Bruce Banner with all the strength of the Incredible Hulk. all the strength and the abilities of the Incredible Hulk. Bruce Banner grabs a cow and throws it at him, and of course, he ends up tearing this thing apart. Of course, finally, once Wolverine's able to basically, impale Bruce Banner with his claws, Banner just turns into like this grotesque, warped version of the Hulk. Now, there's a reason why I kind of wanted to wait until this part to talk about this. During the whole massive event, this whole massive cataclysm that had taken place, we're kind of left to believe that atomic weapons were used. It didn't necessarily, obliterate the planet as a whole, but in the fallout and in the radiation, the reason why Banner and Jennifer Walters started procreating was because they essentially went insane from the radiation. It literally like sent them into overdrive. And in response to this, as this Hulk form, Banner actually eats Logan. He consumes him. Like, he eats him. And so the last remaining member, I guess really the second to the last remaining member of the Hulk family, one of the sons comes back, and he was like, what in the heck happened here? And Hulk's like, well, Logan showed up and I basically had to eat him. Well, then the son's like, yeah, but I thought he had a healing factor. Well, then bam, like Wolverine just emerges, like busts out of the body of the Incredible Hulk and then kills the oldest son. Now, from here, we basically see him grab the newborn baby of the Incredible Hulk and just kind of ride off into the sunset. After saying his goodbyes to his family, the neighbors that were there, it's him just kind of riding off and eventually leaving. Now, the question that I imagine a lot of people are going to have is what happens, after this story's over? Well, it's been explained a couple different ways. The next video that we do, which will be next Saturday, will be Old Man Logan from Secret Wars, and that will show us kind of this continuation with regards to Secret Wars. But in terms of like the in-universe continuation, that was explained during Hickman's Fantastic Four. And what we found out was that basically this version of the Incredible Hulk, this younger Incredible Hulk baby, eventually grows up, to become a warrior or something along those lines. But because the Earth is basically dying, Galactus actually shows up to consume the Earth. What ends up happening is that the Incredible Hulk, alongside whatever few superheroes are left, rally against Galactus and kill him, and then use his body as a way to use his cosmic energies to essentially bypass, or I guess leave, their own universe and show up in the Earth 616, the main Marvel universe, under the guise of creating a planet called New Earth. That's where all that stuff comes from in Hickman's Fantastic Four. Of course, we talked about that, in all the videos that I did on Hickman's Fantastic Four. I'll link the playlist. It's too many videos to link in the description, so we'll just go ahead and link the playlist. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.